everyone, welcome back to our next tutorial, and today it is another amazing pattern by Shamballa Bag Designs. It is the Delphina. Now this is a brand new pattern, just released, and it is gorgeous. It has everything you'd expect from a Shamballa Designs. So it has front and back zipper pockets that extend really far down, so it's surprising how much storage you get. You have a thumb lock that hides a little slip pocket, which is super cute, nice little feature there. The center is secured by a zipper placket, and on the inside you have optional Welt pocket and another zipper pocket. Now, up to you if you want to do those. This bag utilizes a drop-in lining, so we don't rely on any of the zipper pockets to turn the bag out. So if you just wanted to keep it plain, you can. You certainly can. I've utilized piping, and I've gone just with the unadjustable shoulder strap. So you can also do an adjustable crossbody strap if you want to. Up to you. I have plenty of tutorials already up that cover crossbody straps, so just look around for one of those. All right, so I will put the pattern link in the description below. Make sure you head over to her website and grab a copy. You're going to love her patterns. They fit beautifully, and for such a detailed looking bag, it really came together quickly. I was quite surprised. So go ahead, grab the pattern, get everything cut out, get it all sorted, and then let's get sewing. Welcome back to our next sewing adventure, and today it is the amazing Delphina by Shamballa Bag Designs. Now, this bag is everything you'd expect from this amazing designer. It has aesthetics, it has practicality, it has storage, and it's just beautiful. You're going to absolutely love creating this one. And I'm probably going a little bit left of field with this. So I love florals, don't get me wrong. I love alcohol ink prints. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I have this gorgeous Alice in Wonderland inspired vinyl. It is one of the more classic vinyls, so quite thick, but I think it's going to work perfectly for this bag. For the accents, I'm using some purple vinyl, and also there's what is it, like a pink, almost mauve? I don't really know the color, but it just fit really well with it. So I'm doing a bit of a mixture there. And for my lining, I'm using my favorite Vibrant View canvas from Sophisticated. So this one is waterproof. I don't need to interface it, which is such a bonus for me. Okay, so lots of different pieces for this one. A few different odd shaped pieces, but get it all cut, get it all sorted. Once you've done that, apply your stabilizer. So I'm using Decaville Light for most of my pieces that need it. And for my flap, I'm just using a piece of foam. I just wanted that little bit squishiness in it. Okay, now we've talked about materials and stabilization, let's move on to hardware. Okay, in terms of hardware, we're using a few different pieces, which I really enjoy doing because I seem to gather a collection of things that I don't use too often. So primarily we have a thumb lock. So this is going to close our front flap. Now, disclaimer, I could only get ones with a 20mm wide mouth. The pattern does call for 25mm, an inch. So I've just reduced my accent piece there just by that amount. If you can get those 25mm ones, great. If not, this will still work. You also need two 20mm or 3/4 inch swivel clips, some connectors, side connectors. There's so many different varieties on the market. I've just gone for this classic D ring style. Find what suits, see what you can get. You can use a zipper end if you want to. You can also use some strap ends. Now I'm doing the strap that isn't adjustable, it's just a shoulder strap. If you wanted to do an adjustable strap, I have plenty of tutorials that will cover that. You'd also need a tri-glide. We need 4 zipper pulls. How good are these though? How appropriate. And that's about it really. Zipper tape, couple of rivets, and then you're set to go. So our first step before we can start sewing is we're gonna probably prepare most things. So Decaville's on. We're going to start off with our zippers. So get your zippers cut to the sizes listed in the pattern. Grab your 2 zipper tabs for the lining piece, and then let's get started. All right, let's move on to our zippers. So our large zipper, pop it aside for later. We don't need to work with that one now. We have our 3 8-inch zippers. Let's apply our front and back zipper pulls. So decide which zipper pulls you're going to be using. We're going to pop those ones on. So these are the exterior zippers that you're going to be doing. All we're doing, popping our zipper pulls on so we don't forget later. I know we've all done it. It's a mistake that anyone can make. So I want my feature zipper pulls on my front and back because that's the primary focus of that bag where it's going to be seen. And I just could not pass up these zipper pulls. And then for our lining one, this one's a little bit different. Still pop on your zipper pull. So far, 2 out of 3 have gone on seamlessly. But now I've said something, this one won't go on nicely. You watch. Shouldn't have said anything. I jinxed myself. Oh, not bad. Okay. I'm going to call this my lining zipper. We are going to get our zipper tabs and pop them right sides together. Clip and clip. Alright, once you've done that, sew across the short end with a 6mm seam allowance. So 1/4 inch either side. Go ahead and do that and come back. My zipper tabs are now sewn on. All we're going to do is open them out to the sides on both sides there and top stitch through the seam 1/8 of an inch away. So go ahead and top stitch both of those ends. Then we can pop our zippers aside. Next, we're going to move on with our crossbody strap. So grab your strap piece or pieces, depending on what you're doing, and let's get started with that. Onto our strap now. I am going off the plan again. So I'm doing a 2-tone strap. Follow the written instructions. Just do a double fold classic strap if you want to. So that's when you'd cut it at the 3 inches, fold the long edges to the center, fold it again to enclose those raw edges. I'm just going to be doing a 2-tone because I can. And I tend to do it. I don't know why. It's just something I do. So on the wrong side of my straps, I've drawn a line halfway down. I'm going to get some double-sided tape and just stick a line down over the drawn line. So halfway across. I'm not sure why I always do 2-tone straps. I think I just like to keep the colour theme going, but it would look just as good with a singular colour. Alright, so sticking it down, I'll just quickly stick this one down and then I'll show you what I do next. So I hope that you've tried a Shamballa Designs bag before because they are always so beautiful. They're just pretty bags, but they're practical as well. Okay. Pressing it down, peel the backing off. I'll just do it bit by bit. All we're going to do is get our long raw edges and fold them to the center. That's all, nothing crazy other than that. So go ahead and do that. I'm not going to bore you with it. I'll roll fast forward while I do it because it's going to be a lot more palatable to watch it that way. All right. Okay, that took a little while, but there's my 2 straps folded down. Now, I just pop some clips on because the vinyl starts to lift after a little while. And I'll get some more double-sided tape and just put it down over that center there and just follow it down, pressing down as I go. So 2-fold effect to hold the edges down in the center, and also when I stick my straps together, it'll stick them together and make sewing a lot easier for me. I don't know about you, but I'm very much not a patient person. I'm probably surprised I got into sewing, to be honest, because I do not possess a patient bone in my body. So this, when I see my vinyl starting to lift, it makes me mad. I'm just going to say that. It makes me mad. And I can see my dark purple vinyl over there starting to peel back. I promise I won't swear. I promise. It's probably hard for me. And I'm a classic Aussie girl. Alright, there we go. Then, now that's on there, give it a good press. See what I mean? All I'm going to do now is firstly make that better. It can be a bit fiddly when you're dealing with straps, but we'll get there. I'm just going to peel the backing off this ever so slightly. Lay my purple one down flat and just slowly put them together. So wrong sides together, where we're hiding those raw edges. We want to put those together, and that way from either side of our strap it'll look finished and neat. So just go along and do that all the way down. I won't bore you with that because that probably would be boring to watch. Then once you've done that, go ahead and sew around all four sides of your strap. So top stitching length, just lengthen up your stitches a little bit, increase your tension if you're using double vinyl like I am as well. So go ahead and do that, and when you get back, grab your strap hardware and we'll pop that on to finish our strap. Alright, my strap is now top stitched both sides, no skip stitches, so yay for me. Alright, we're going to fold our strap through our swivel clip. Now, like I said before, if you want to make the adjustable strap, check out, I have quite a few tutorials that cover that. So I'm going to fold it over, and you want about 1 inch being folded over. So you figure out how much you need, because all swivel clips are different. Once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to punch a rivet hole. Make sure you've got enough room between the edge of your swivel clip and the bottom. So mine's about just over 1/2 inch away, give or take. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for both of those. So swivel clips on, fold over, punch and set your rivet, and then come back and we'll pop on our optional strap ends. Rivets are set, and now all we need to do is apply our strap hardware. So I really like to use these. Up to you. You can use edge paint, you don't have to use anything at all. It really is up to you on that one. So do yourself a favor, grab yourself also a magnetized screwdriver. Just makes things a little bit easier. So all we do is pop our screws in, just using my fingers to hold it nice and still. And then the same for the other screw hole. So I always like to buy quality hardware. You can get really cheap ones of these, but I often found if I've used them in the past, like the screws never fit or they just thread so easily, and it's just not worth the risk as well. You want your bag to stay beautiful for years, not just immediately afterwards anyway. And yes, I am using a saucer dish to hold my hardware because that's what I had in my room. Okay, last one. There we go. Done. There's our strap. So you can pop that one aside for the moment. And next up, we're going to be moving along with our flap piece. So grab your flap exterior, the flap accent, lining, stabilizer, and your thumb lock. Onto our flap. Now we have our exterior, our lining. I do have my stabilizer piece, which I'm going to be adding later. And we have our flap accent piece. Now there's two options when you sew the flap. You can do the turned method so you don't have any raw edges, which is what I'm going to be doing. Or you can do, say if you're doing 2 layers of vinyl, just a raw edge finish. So up to you. Like I said though, I'll be doing the turned method. So we have our flap accent strip. I've drawn a line down the middle. Bit of double-sided tape. much like we did with our strap. Fold the edges in, pressing down nice and hard. There we go. My dog's wandering around in my sewing room, probably looking for something tasty to eat. Okay, and I'm just going to pop another strip on the rear. Now on your exterior, mark your center points because we want to center this up. So pop that on the center. Just look at it from the top or bottom. So make sure the join mark or the folded mark of your accent piece matches. Once you've done that, we're going to take it back to the machine and we're going to sew down each side with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to check. Yeah, that's going to fit a lot better. Okay, so go ahead and do those 2 rows of top stitching. There's my flap accent piece attached. Now, yay for no skip stitches. Next, we're going to get our lining and pop it right sides together. Grab some clips and clip around that flap piece, matching up those raw edges. There we go. Alright, once you have done that, take it back to your machine and we're going to sew around the outside with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving that top portion open for turning. So go ahead and do that now and then come back and we'll talk about how we're going to reduce the seam allowance for a nice smooth finish. There we go, I've sewn around that outside edge. Now I'm just going to grab some pinking shears and just reduce down those edges. I might taper off before I get to my flap accent piece. In fact, let's just go all the way around just for continuity of thickness. Okay, there we go. Next, we're going to turn this right sides out. I just have to be careful because this is like it's what they call here original synthetic leather, so it's quite thick. It's not like the smooth vinyl where it's quite easy to work with. This you actually run the risk of perforating it, so you've got to be quite careful with it, especially when you're turning things out. So I'm just going slowly. If you do have a thick vinyl that you are struggling to turn out, by all means you can always just steam it. Hair dryer is also a good option with that. Next, I'm just going to get some clips. And I'm just going to clip this along the edge just to make sure that it's not going to, the lining's not going to come out towards the front. We want our lining hidden towards the back. No matter how beautiful the lining fabric is, we still want it to be staying where it's meant to go anyway. And when you get to your flap accent piece, just might need to use your strong muscles just to push it to the back. There we go. Last couple. Now before we can install our turn lock, we need to go ahead and top stitch this first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch it 1/8 of an inch around the edges. Then I will insert my stabilizer, which I can already see I need to cut down just a little bit. I just don't want too much extra bulk going through this one. So I'll top stitch, add my stabilizer, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our thumb lock. There's my flap top stitch, and now I just need to apply this top part of my thumb lock. So we're going to center it over our flap accent piece. Now, of course, if you chose not to do the flap accent piece, you can still install your thumb lock. But the beauty of this sort of pattern is that you don't have to do either. You can just do a magnetic lock if you want to. Now, I'm just checking that that is center, and I've pushed it down as far as it will go. Then I'm just going to press it with my hands just quickly, and then I have these pliers that I'm just going to slowly and but surely go from either side, pressing those teeth in until they lock down on my strap, on my flap, sorry. I'm getting distracted. There we go. All right, that looks good. So I'll just give it a little wiggle just to make sure that I'm happy with it. But, yep, that looks great. Okay, happy with that. Now, we need to apply the bottom part of this. So, we need to get our front, slip pocket. Our front slip pocket, that's it. Grab your paper pattern piece and make sure you transferred the marking for that as well. So go ahead and grab that and then come back here and we'll finish this section off. Alright, so there is my thumb lock attached. I just pressed it down with these trusty plier things that I got. I'm not sure where I got those from. So I just centered it over the top there, pressed it down really nice and hard so that's not going to go anywhere. You got little prongs on the back that pierce through the fabric, so it should stay nice and still. Okay, onto the section where we're going to attach the bottom part. So we have our front exterior slip pocket piece, and I've also done the marking, the center marking as suggested by the paper pattern piece. Then I've just measured the prongs on the back and made markings where those need to go. So making sure they're center, I've just used a friction pen to mark the center. I'm going to go ahead, I'll cut little slits in there, attach the prongs, push them through, and then just put some duct tape over the back just to make sure they're secure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You do that also, and when we get back, we're going to need our slip pocket lining piece. So find that, bring it back, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, I've installed that. I just popped some duct tape over the back just to protect the back of the fabric. So looking lovely. Very cool. Okay, let's get onto the lining. So we have our slip pocket lining, and notice the shape of it. It goes down. So we want to match the shape to the top of this because some of the exterior will get folded over to the rear. That's why it's a lot shorter. You didn't make a mistake with your cutting, don't worry. Alright, clip across the top and then back to the machine, sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, I've sewn across the top there. Now I'm just going to cut the corners just to reduce a bit of bulk. And then we're going to fold our lining upwards, keeping our seam pointed upwards as well. Top stitch through this lining and seam with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I've top stitched. Now we're going to fold these wrong sides together and match up those bottom edges. So lining down to meet that bottom edge. And you'll notice that there's a fairly large portion of that exterior on the wrong side, which is good. That's what we want. So I'm just going to fold that. And then from the bottom, I sort of press upwards to make sure my fold is nice and even. And then I will just clip along the side there, and then maybe a couple of clips along the top. Alright, so check that you're happy with that. Make sure that those bottom edges are matched up as closely as possible, please. And then once you've done that, we want to go ahead and top stitch through the top there, through the fold with a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then baste the remaining 3 sides. That way we're going to keep it nice and still. Alright, once you've done that, we're going to move along with our side pieces and accent strips. So you need to go along, find those and bring them back with you. Alright, we are moving on with our side piece and accent strips. Now the pattern does have a great suggestion that you get your paper pattern pieces, make sure that your fabric is in the right order, the pieces are matching up, because the angles are slightly different, but that slight difference will make a world of difference later on. So I've paired them up as we go. I'll just show you one, so I'll move them carefully over. What we're going to do, once you've paired them, flip them over, pop them right sides together, clip down the edges, so the long straight edges only. There we go. Once you've done that, we're going to stitch through that seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you're going to repeat the process with the other 3. So keeping track of which pieces go with which That's why it's always a good idea just to lay them out. It takes an extra 10 seconds, but I can guarantee unpicking things will take a lot longer. So go ahead, sew the 4 sets with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Those 4 are sewn. Now we're just going to fold this open with our seam allowance being folded towards this accent strip. Then we're going to top stitch through the accent strip with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Repeat that for all 4 of those pieces. Once we've done that, we'll look at putting together our exterior. There are my side pieces all done now, so we're going to pop those aside and we're going to attach our flap. So we need our front panel top piece. We're going to attach our flap to the bottom of our front panel top. So I've made a center marking, pop that right sides together. So flip it over, clip it in place. Once you've done that, back to your machine and just baste that in place. On your way back, find your front panel bottom piece. This is a lining piece. So baste, find that piece and return. That's now basted in place and we have our front panel bottom. Pop that right sides together. You'll notice that one end of this is shorter, is narrower than the other. Obviously we want to put on the end that matches, so the narrower end of your front panel bottom. Once you clipped it in place, take it back to your machine and we are going to stitch across with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's now sewn. Now next step, we're going to flip this on up. So seam allowance goes down, your flap will naturally flip up towards the top there, and that's fine. Let's top stitch through the bottom here with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that. And on your way back, go ahead and find your front slip pocket, the one that we attach the bottom of our thumb lock to. We'll need that up next. Top stitching done. Now we're going to grab our slip pocket and line it up with the front panel bottom. So line up those bottom edges and pop some clips in place. Same with there, and just go around clipping it in, lining it up, making sure it's nice and straight. Okay, there we go. All right, so baste those 3 sides, and when we come back we'll also talk about an optional row of stitches that will just help achieve a nicer fold for our front flap. But first, baste those edges. We've basted in place, and now a great tip which I am going to do is to do a row of top stitching through the flap and just above the edge of this slip pocket. Through there, stopping either side of that flap, just to help give it a nicer fold. Now that is optional, you don't have to do it, but I'm going to. So about 3 mil from the top of this slip pocket along the flap here, just to hold it nice and still in place. So go ahead and do that. And then if you're going to be applying a logo tag, now is the time. There's a marking that you can make, pop your logo tag on if you wish to do so, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, now we need to start getting prepared for putting our exterior together. So we're going to focus now on our exterior zipper pockets. So we need to pop some double-sided tape on things. We need to put it on the right side, along the top edges of our front and back exterior panels. On the right side, bottom edge of our top bands, and also top and bottom of our zipper pocket linings. So go ahead and do that, do the preparation, and also grab those 2 zippers, the 8-inch ones that we prepared earlier. So find those and then come back. Okay, time to get going. So I'll just show you on one, process is the same for both. We have our exterior, we're going to pop our zipper right sides down, lining that top edge nice and straight. Do that, and then we are going to get our zipper pocket lining. I've taken the backing off my double-sided tape, stick that down, aligning that top edge. Once you've done that, back to your machine, sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Use your zipper foot for that one, and you can repeat the process for both the front and back at the same time. Okay, I have sewn this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to flip it up and over, get our pocket lining and exterior wrong sides together. Once you've done that, just press with your fingers and sew a top stitch 1/8 inch seam allowance from the top of both of your edges. So go ahead and repeat the process for both your front and back. Top stitching is done, and now we are going to finish up this pocket. So we peel the backing off the tape, or half the tape apparently. Doesn't want to work for me today at all. And then fold it, lining the other end, this end of the pocket, with the top of the zipper. So go ahead and do that. Then we're going to go back to our sewing machine, baste across the top of the zipper to hold it there. Then we can align the sides. Make sure you're happy with how everything's sitting and that you're going to catch both sides of that zipper pocket. So it's worth just doing the top first and then tackling this bottom part. So once you've basted across the top, and then baste those two sides together just to hold our zipper pocket in place. Repeat the process for the back and front. Now that the center of our exterior panels is done, we're going to attach the side pieces. So we're going to get a pair, lay them right sides together and align the bottom nice and precisely, making sure that they are in line. If you have a little bit of extra at the top, don't worry. We will be trimming that off later, so that is not a concern. We're more worried about the bottom and making sure that they're in alignment. So get your pair, clip along, same with the other side. Line up the bottom, clip along. Once you clip them together, sew each side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat that process for your back panel and the remaining two side pieces. Side pieces are now sewn on and it's looking so good. I'm loving these colours. It's so bright and happy. All right, we are going to open it out. Seam allowance goes towards our side pieces, and to mirror the other side, top stitch through the side, this side accent piece, with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Repeat the process for the other three pieces. So go ahead and do that. How good does that look? I'm really excited about this. It's beautiful and colourful. Now I also have just trimmed those top edges in line with the zipper. So you can get a ruler, just mark across it and trim them up accordingly. And now we need to get our top bands. So there's two of these. We are going to pop them right sides together with our main panels. So I'm just going to peel the backing off my double-sided tape. Again, easier said than done. Look at that. It just totally split. Yell out if you got some recommendations for some good double-sided tape, because this is driving me a little bit bonkers now. Okay, then we are going to align those straight edges. So this is the wider portion at the bottom. So line it across. I didn't do a very good job of that, but you get the idea anyway. It wants to stick on me. Now my double-sided tape wants to work, hey? How convenient. All right, I'll get it better than that, but align it along the top, both of the top bands to our main panels. And once you've done that, sew across each with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've sewn across the top of those, and now we're going to fold this up, keeping the seam allowance pointing up as well, and then top stitch through this seam with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Do the same for both of those. And then next, we're going to look at doing our piping. So if you're not going to do the piping, you can just skip the next bit. Otherwise, grab your piping pieces and your piping cord and then come back here. Okay, now that our main panels are almost done, let's move on with our piping. So if you're not doing piping, skip over this bit, of course. So we have our strips of piping material. I've made a mark 3/4 of an inch from each end. Now, high likelihood this is probably going to be a bit too long, but we can trim it down a little bit later in the process. I am hopefully going to find some double-sided tape that isn't going to shred. I'm going to pop a line of double-sided tape down the center of my strips. Now, there's a few methods you can use when you're doing piping. I like to baste my piping together, just because I know that apparently the double-sided tape I use doesn't like to stick, for one. And I just find it easier to handle when it's basted together. But if you don't want to do the basting step, that is fine. And also when it comes to the actual piping cord that goes in there, I use a 2mm cord. I don't like my piping being too thick, so I want to keep it nice and thin. Now with our piping cord, we apply it down the center, stopping at that 3/4 inch mark. It doesn't have to be exactly in the center, sort of one of those close enough is good enough situations. All the way across to the other side, and then just cut it off at that 3/4 inch line. And then piping cord, fold it together. I'll just clip it. When I'm sewing it though, I don't tend to clip it, I just sort of hold it together as I go. If you're using double-sided tape, you can put another line in there and hold it together. We want to really make sure that that piping cord is right in the middle there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to baste this, but like I said, if you're using double-sided tape, you can just press it down, give it a good press, roll it, do whatever you need to, and then it'll be ready for the next step. So I'll go baste it and then I'll come back and we'll discuss that next step. I basted my piping, so I know that it's secure and it's not going to go anywhere. So let's attach it to our main panels. We have the markings where we want our piping to start and finish. Raw edges together, meet that mark on the top band with the edge of the piping just for the moment, and we'll just go around clipping it to the edge. So what we want to do is not pull on it, but also make sure that it's not too slack. You want it pulled fairly tight without distorting the panel. I was going to go a lighter purple for this, but I'm actually quite glad I stuck with the same color tone. When we get to the corners, little snips will make a world of difference, especially if you're using double vinyl like me. And I seem to do this every time. I use a domestic machine. Granted, it is a strong domestic machine, but still a domestic machine, and sometimes I push for the friendship with it, so I've got to be wary of that. So just pull on the piping slightly to open up those little slits as you go around, and then straight across the bottom. Then we'll get to the other side. Once we get to the other side again, we are going to cut the slits again, without trying to unravel our double-sided tape. Again, they're only going about 1/8 of an inch in ideally. We don't want to make them too deep, otherwise you'll risk seeing them once you sew it. Curve it around. You do want those corners being fairly tight, so pull it fairly tight, again, without distorting the panel. But we don't want them too loose, otherwise it'll you run the risk of it pleating, and that's just not a good look. Now, when we get to the other end, if your piping cord is too long, like mine is, what we want to do is cut it at that marking, and then, where's my quick unpick? Looking for it, can't find it, that's okay. That is one, I will admit, one piece of my sewing equipment, my seam ripper, that always goes missing, which is funny because I seem to use it a fair bit. You wouldn't think it goes missing. So I'm just going to undo a couple of those stitches and then just grab that piping cord out and just chop off a little bit. Shouldn't make too much difference because I'm using quite a small one, but We don't want it to be in the way. Okay, so that is it at the moment. Once you've done that, we want to curve our piping out. So by the time we get to the mark on the top band, it is out of the seam allowance. So dependent on your fabric you've used for piping, you might need to cut little slits in it. It just depends. But as you might be able to see, by the time we get to that top band marking, my piping will be out of that seam allowance. I'll do the same for the other side. Curve it out and clip it in place. So it curves out. Now back to the machine, baste all the way around, paying special attention to the top of that. Now once you've done one, great, go ahead and do the back panel or front panel, vice versa on that. So you need to do both of your main panels with the piping. There is my piping attached, and this bag is already making me smile. I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. Okay, let's pop those aside and we're going to get onto our gussets. So we have our two exterior gusset pieces. Now first step is to apply our bag hooks or anchors, strap connectors, whatever you want to call it. So there is a marking on the pattern piece that is for the top point of your anchor, and look, it really depends on how big you're using. There's no set mark, but I've just used the washer off the back of it to line it up and put my holes in. And then what I'm going to do first up is get my screws through the holes. I use my rivet press to do the holes, put that through. Sometimes it is a bit hard to poke the screws through because they're not exactly sharp screws. And then pop that on. So screw goes in, easier said than done sometimes. There we go. Don't do it all the way up firstly. Just screw it to about halfway in and then start your other screw off as well. Otherwise it'll get on an awful angle and you won't be able to get it in. And once both have taken, just go around and tighten them up as much as you can. There. Okay, I'm going to repeat on the other side. So you go ahead and apply your strap hardware or your connector hardware, and then we'll get on to sewing our gusset next. So go do that and then check back in. Strap hardware is now been put on. So now we're going to get our gussets and we're going to pop them right sides together, lining up those bottom edges. Clip, and then we're going to take it back to the machine and sew across the bottom, this time with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I've sewn across the end and just taken a little chamfer off each side just to reduce that seam allowance bulk. Now we're going to open up our seam allowance, and you can use some double-sided tape or glue, whatever you want to hold that open. I'm going to go for golden knot. But we're going to take it back to the machine and we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch either side of that seam. So with our seam allowance open, 2 lines of stitching, and then gather together your main panels because we're going to attach our gusset to our main panels. Alright, that is sewn, and now it's time to start to put our exterior together. I'm going to start off with my front panel. You can go with the back panel, whatever you want. We're going to match up the center of our gusset to the center of our front panel. If you need to, just redraw your marks. I can just see mine behind the piping. Now I can already tell this is quite thick. Will I regret my decision to do vinyl piping? Quite possibly. I'm just going to clip across the bottom first. Now the next step is probably best done with either a piping foot or your zipper foot, if you've done the piping especially. Then we go to the side and match up those top edges. Pop a few clips in there. Other side as well. It's important that we match up those top edges as well as the bottom. That way we have our key points that we need to ensure are nice and even. You can just tell this is already a beautiful size bag. It's not going to be too big, but it's going to just be right for fitting everything you need in it. Okay, so clip around. Just take your time with this, and look, more the clips the better generally. There is no harm in using a decent amount of clips. I'm just going to get my scissors and just cut little snips into that bottom corner of the gusset, just to get it to go around smoothly. Like I said repeatedly, this vinyl is quite thick. Not the easiest to work with. I love the result that it gives, but sometimes when it's going around curves it can be a little bit tricky. But that fit beautifully once I've done those little cuts in it. Okay, we'll repeat the same for the other corner. Now you can baste it if you want, otherwise if you're feeling confident, our mainstay stitch is at a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, back stitching at the top and other side as well. Once you've done that, repeat the same process for your other main panel. Clip it, cut those little slits in the corners if you need to, and then sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go, so our exterior is sewn together. I did trim the seam allowances just a bit, just to account for that thickness of the vinyl. And I've also added my double-sided tape and folded over the top there, ready to be turned inside out, which I will do in a second, but you probably don't need to see me struggle on camera with that one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn it right side out. You can choose if you want to add the double-sided tape now or later. I always find it easier now. That way I can see it and I don't have to try and do it on the inside. So we'll turn it right side out, and then next we're going to start to work on our Welt pocket. So if you don't want to do a Welt pocket, just skip straight over the next bit. Otherwise, grab a lining panel, your Welt strip, facing, and the pocket linings. All right, let's get started with our Welt pocket. So we have our main lining panel and our Welt pocket facing. I've made a line center and also a horizontal one, 1 1/4 inches from the top. Now we are going to get our Welt facing strip and line it up with that line and then pin in place. So I've just copied across, the rectangle from the paper pattern piece. So just pin it in place just so it stays put. Then we're going to go back to our machine and we're going to sew this rectangle. Use smaller stitch length around and just be really precise on those corners. So go ahead and do that, and when we get back we'll talk about how we're going to cut this out. I've sewn around my rectangle, and I've also drawn in red how we're going to cut this facing. So 2 triangles on each short end and a line intersecting. I'm just going to fold it in half, lining up the top edge. 1 cut in the middle, just a small one, just to get us started. And then cut through to that triangle, then turn. And as you go towards the corners, just be careful not to cut through the stitches. Just cut as close as you can. That way it'll be a nice neat corner. If you leave too much fabric there, it can bunch up and just look a bit messy. There we go. Alright, now's the time we need to warm up our iron. We're going to push that facing through to the wrong side and then press it. Just roll the seam and press it so none of that facing is showing through from the front. We need to repeat that process around all 4 sides. So go ahead and do that. And then on your way back, grab your Welt pocket strip and your pocket lining. Not zipper lining, your pocket lining. Okay, there is my lining panel, looking nice and neat. And now we just have a little bit of preparation to do for our Welt pocket. So we have our Welt pocket strip. I've just applied some double-sided tape on the bottom there, which I'll peel off in a moment. And then we have our Welt pocket lining. I'm going to get some double-sided tape on the right side and pop it at each short end. Meanwhile, my tape is just disintegrating before my eyes, but that's okay. Oh goodness, I made that happen. That was karma. Okay. All right. One day I'll find good double-sided tape. Now, let's start off by flipping this on over. So we're going to be working with the wrong side first. Peel off your tape. Now if you want to, you can actually stitch around this Welt strip to hold it in place. Up to you. If you're using fabric, of course, you can press it. I'm using vinyl, so pressing would not be advised, but I'm just making sure I'm pressing it nice and thoroughly, matching up those long raw edges. Okay, then I need to figure out which way up I want it. Which way? Maybe that way? Okay, so on the right side at the bottom along the raw edge. So folded edge will be up. We are going to pop this right side down to wrong side of lining. And line it up so that the top of your Welt strip sits just below the window. So I'll flip it over. You want it so it just sits below, I'm talking a millimetre, if anything. So just below. Press or pin, do what you need to do. Okay, next, once that's secure, we're going to peel the tape off one end of our pocket lining. We'll peel the backing off. There we go. I'm going to line it up, so center it over the facing. So use your facing as a guide as to center. And I just like to line it up right down the bottom there of my Welt strip, because I know my Welt strip finishes about a centimetre below the window, so I know I'm going to catch the bottom of my pocket. Next, we're going to go back to our machine. I'll do it the right way. And we are going to top stitch just along the bottom here with our 1/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that just on the bottom. There we go. I've top stitched along the bottom. I pulled the threads to the back and just knotted them off. And now we are going to get our pocket and fold it down. I'm just going to use my hands to press it. Then peel the backing off the other end of our tape. 1 and 2. Then fold it up, and I like to meet the top of the facing or just underneath. Probably about 1/4 inch underneath the top of our facing. It's probably hard to see, I know. Okay. I like to pin this as well just to make sure that it's not going to flop around everywhere. And then I'm going to finish top stitching, so the short sides, the top edge and the other short side. Just be wary of where your Welt strip is sitting. Try not to catch it anywhere unnecessarily. We don't want to catch it at any point along this top row. So go ahead and do that. Alright, we have finished our top stitching, and now we just need to close up the side of our pockets. So grab your clips, fold the front away. Now I did hem tape this, so I'm just going to peel it back a little bit. There we go. So just clip the sides. The process is the same for both sides of the pocket. We are going to clip and then back to the machine, and we are going to sew each side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just be sure to backstitch nice and thoroughly. Once you've done that, go ahead and grab your other lining panel, and we're going to also need our zipper that we did as well, and that's about it, the top lining panel too. Onto our other lining panel. So a little bit of preparation before we begin. We've marked the centers of everything. We need to apply double-sided tape to the top of the lining panel, to the bottom of the lining top panel, and to both ends, short ends of our zipper pocket lining. So once you've done that, we're going to peel the backing off the lining double-sided tape, grab our zipper, pop it right sides together. I'm having my zipper pull closing to the left. Oops. And just pop it along there. Just lining up those straight edges. If your zipper tab is longer, that is fine. That's actually what we want. We'd rather it be too long than too short. All right, just press it down, make sure it's nice and straight. Then grab your zipper pocket lining, peel back one side, just one end of the tape. We don't want to peel both at the moment because otherwise it can attach itself to many different things. Right side's down on top of the zipper, so sandwiching the zipper in between these two pieces. There we go. All right, looking good. Now, back to our sewing machine. With a zipper foot, sew across the top there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've sewn across the top there. Now we're going to lift it up and over and getting those pieces right sides out, so wrong sides together. Just give it a little bit of a pull, and if you can press it, I would recommend it. That way you can be sure that that's a nice straight edge. Once you've pressed it and you're happy with it, let's take it back to the machine and top stitch across that seam with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Then on your way back, make sure that this lining top is prepared because we'll finish this pocket off. Top stitching is done. Now we'll flip it on over. We're going to take off the backing off our double-sided tape. I was just getting stuck to my dressing gown. Yes, I do sew my dressing gown a lot, so it's like my favourite thing to wear. Even when it's hot, I'll wear my dressing gown wherever I can. So we're going to stick that in line with that top part of the zipper. Now you can baste it if you want to, up to you. I'm thinking my double-sided tape's going to hold, so I'm not too worried about that. Next, I'm going to lift up my lining piece. This will expose the sides of our pockets. So clip along them. Okay, back to the sewing machine. Now we want to sew along the sides of these pockets with our 1/4 inch seam allowance, but we don't want to sew over this lining panel. So get as close as you can to that seam without sewing over. Do the same for both sides. Now my zipper pocket is sewn up. We're going to get our lining top panel. Just get that zipper pull out the way. Peel off the backing paper. Line up the center points, popping them right sides together. Again, sandwiching that zipper in between. And just press it along till it's nice and straight. I'll trim these zipper tabs in a sec, so don't worry about those right now. Okay, there we go. Back to the machine with your zipper foot, 1/4 inch seam allowance across the top there. Then once you've sewn that, you'll flip it up and top stitch 1/8 of an inch through this lining top panel. So go ahead and do that, and then when we get back, I think we'll move on to our zipper panel. There's our lining panel done, looking really, really neat. I do like that technique. All I'm going to do now is follow the line of the lining panel. Just trim those sides just a little bit. There we go. Okay, let's pop that one aside while we prepare our zipper panels now. So, let's start with our zipper actually. I've got my zipper pull attached. Now to finish off these ends at that 90-degree angle, it's up to you how you do it. I like to use my lighter to do this. You can use your machine to stitch it, you can hand baste it, you can glue it, staple it, look, up to you. But all I do is fold it to the back, then fold it back to the front. I haven't always done this technique. I used to hand baste them. Then, I forget where I saw it, probably YouTube somewhere, like YouTube, and then it sort of changed how I work. Because once I realised that I wasn't in fact going to burn myself badly, as long as you don't hold your fingers under that naked flame and give yourself half a second after you melt it, just to get that initial really hot heat out of the plastic or the polyester, then you're fine. I have, however, burnt my thumbnail before. Not my finest moment. But if you're not confident, like I said, use your machine or just grab a needle and thread and just baste it yourself. There we go. There's our zipper ready to go. Let's pop that one aside. Now our zipper panels. On the wrong side of each, I have drawn a line at 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to fold down each short edge to meet that line. So go ahead and do that on all 4 panels. Once you've done that, so prepare your zipper panels, come back and we'll talk about attaching our zipper on. All right, our zipper panels are prepared. Now on the right side, along the long edges where you want your zipper to go, I've placed little marks 1 centimeter from the end. I'm just going to separate my zipper now. It's a lot easier to work with when it's separated. Run a line of double-sided tape, just stopping at that 1 centimeter marking. Same at the other end. There we go. Alright, so we need to do that. When you have separated your zipper and everything's ready to go, peel off your backing off your tape. We are going to get our zipper right sides together, lining up the raw edge along the raw edge of our zipper panel. And you want that 90-degree angle. It's going to be hard to show you, but 90-degree angle just finishing in line. Then we're going to do the same one. Same thing on the other side. Peel it off, line it up so that teeth are just in line with that 1 centimeter marking. Okay. Now you can double side tape your lining. I prefer not to, but up to you. It's hard to tell, isn't it? Right sides together, and then I like to put the lining ever so slightly behind the main. So just back a little bit from the edge, just so we don't see any lining poking through. Okay, do the same for both, clip them both, then back to the machine, and we're just sewing along this long edge here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Do the same for both of your panels. I've sewn along the edge of my zipper panels. So now you can turn it out, but if you find that you're getting a fair amount of bulk in these corners, sometimes it is a good idea just to cut the vinyl or your fabric away, and then the same at the other end. You'll just have to probably unpeel your double-sided tape and be sure not to cut your zipper. We do not want to do that. Then we're going to fold it wrong sides together. So just pinch it, manipulate it, and roll the seam so that your zipper is sitting nice and straight and flat. Just giving a little pull is fine. Other end as well. Again, just pinch it. If you want to pop double-sided tape on to hold it, if that's what makes you feel a bit more confident, then go for it. Alright, we're going to repeat the process with both of those, but first, top stitch through this seam with 1/8 inch seam allowance, also the short sides I should say as well. So top stitch, short side, zipper side, short side, 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then just baste that raw end closed. Repeat the process for both of your zippers, and then when we get back, we're going to need our lining panels and our interior top panels. Let's start to put this all together. Now that our zipper pulls are done, it's time to put this all together. So I'm going to start by finding the center point of my zipper panels, just by folding them wrong sides together or lining sides together, and just a little snip. We do want these to be center on our lining panels, that way it all matches up, it all looks good. Now I like to start off with my lining panel with the zipper, just so I know which direction I want this going in. We want our zipper panel sitting right side up on top of our lining panel, which is also right side up. And I want my zipper closing the same direction. So just line these up, matching those center points. Clip. And then we'll do the same for the other side. Just again, make sure that they're sitting right sides up, and obviously they're going to be going in different directions, which is exactly what we want. Okay. Before we add on our interior top panels, let's go ahead and just base those together. I think it is important that you base these. You don't want to risk them shifting. Okay, they are basted on. Now I'm just going to get my zipper tape. I have cut it longer than it needs to be. I'm going to fold it back on itself and just pin it. I don't know how many times this has probably saved me from unpicking a whole lot of bag because my zipper tails are flying around. Alright, now we are going to get our lining top panels. I'm just laying them out as they're going to be attached. Flip it on over and clip those right sides together along the top. Now I have gone double vinyl for this one, but also now is the time that you need to make sure that you have drawn on your fold down line. So that is that 3/4 inch line. We want to make sure that's on now, or in a step very close to, because soon we're going to be sticking our tape on there and folding it down. Alright, so we are going to repeat the process for both of our panels. Clip along the top and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So there we've sewn our lining top panels up. Now we're going to flip this on up. So lining contrast band and our zipper placket goes up, seam allowance stays down, and we're going to top stitch through the seam with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Repeat the process for the other one as well. Both of my lining panels are ready to go. So now we are going to get these right sides together and take your time to line up these contrast panel seams. So the contrast band seams. We want them to line up pretty much spot on because it is going to be a focal point, and if it's ever so slightly off, it's not going to, ruin the world, but you will notice it. Now we're going to clip down the sides. Again on the other side, lining up those sides nicely. Now you can staple them, you can baste them as well if you want to. Whatever you feel you need to do, really. And then clip along the bottom edges as well. Alright, once you've done that, we're going to take this back to the machine and we're going to sew along these 3 sides with a 1 centimetre seam allowance this time. So 1 centimetre seam allowance. Once you've done that, come back because we'll talk about how we're going to box these corners. There we go, I've sewn the sides and the bottom. Now I am just going to trim my seam allowance down, but when I get up towards the top, I'm going to avoid cutting into the area where I need to fold it down. So I'm just going to taper off about 1 inch from the top, if that line's at the 3/4 mark. Same thing for this side. This is optional, you don't have to, and if you do, try not to get too close to your stitches. And along the bottom as well. Okay, now that we've done that, let's box these corners. So to do this, we just separate the sides and align the bottom seam with the side seam. I like to nest my seams, which means my bottom seam allowance will go one way and the side seam allowance will go the other. Especially because I have now cut my seam allowances down. So do that one. And same on the other side. Okay, once we've done that, back to the machine, sew across each of those with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, then I'll trim down my seams. Alright, now that my lining is sewn, it's time to fold over those top edges to our drop down line. I've opened the seam allowances on the sides and I've just popped some double-sided tape just on the sides first. Grab my clips and I'm just going to go around folding those edges down to meet that line. Press, clip, then I'll repeat on the other side. I do like to do the sides first. Whoopsies, look at that, it was all connected. So sides first, and then we'll go around and we'll clip the rest of that and retrieve your exterior because it's time to put it all together. All right, here we go. It's time to finish our bag. So we have both of our top edges folded down. We are going to pop the lining inside the exterior. Now, zipper pocket to the back of the bag. I mean, there is no rules. You can put it to the front of the bag if you want, really, up to you. And the beauty of drop-ins is that we don't have to worry about turning it out. Once we finish our top stitching, it is done. Now, I like to put a little bit of tape on my side seam of my liner. That way I can make sure I'm aligning it nicely with the exterior side. And then once I've aligned the sides, it's pretty easy to fit the rest of it together. Getting the backing off the tape might be the hard bit though. Now I do still have a bit of a line from where I connected or installed my connector. And we just want to pop the lining either in line exactly or ever so slightly lower than our exterior. Try not to have lining poking up out. Again, no rules against it, but for a neater finish, we want that lining panel just slightly below our exterior, but not too far down. Because we will be top stitching this with a 1/8 inch seam allowance, we need to make sure we're catching our lining. So all you want to do is go around, clip around the top of the bag. Again, more clips the better. And if you wanted to use double-sided tape, by all means use it. That is perfectly fine. So I'm just going to go up, I'm going to check along those edges, clip them all together, make sure it's all sitting nicely. And once we've done that, we're going to sew around the top of this bag with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to make sure I increase my stitch tension and length, and I'll probably use a thicker thread as well. So let's go do that and finish off this beautiful bag. Okay, my top stitching is done. Now before we get too excited, let's finish off our zipper. So we're going to get our zipper pull and pop it on the end. Now my zipper is way too long, but I'll pop the zipper on first, have a look and see how it feels, and then we'll go from there. Okay, make sure it's nice and even. What do you think about there? You want to be able to open it, but you don't want ridiculous amounts of zip tape hanging off. Just be sure though, before you cut it. Okay, and now we're going to put our zipper end on. So I'm just going to get some glue on the end of this horrible old paintbrush. There. Fold the wrong edges or the back of the zipper together. And then I just get my zipper end and put it on until it butts up to the end of the zipper. Then get my screwdriver, where have I put that? Over here, and the screw. Alright, so go ahead, add your zipper end, find your strap, and then come back here and let's have a look at our finished bags. Okay, our zipper's on, our strap is attached, and now we can look and see our beautiful finished Delphina. What a stunning bag, and I'm sorry, but I love these colors that I've chosen. They're so fun. It is probably way outside my normal color range. Normally I go for florals, I go for muted colors, but wow, just wow. I love it. It has so much storage for a crossbody bag or cross shoulder bag. It really has everything you could possibly want. And the thumb lock. I mean, how good is a thumb lock? It's just so cute. Great little storage. And that main compartment, that's going to hold everything and anything we need. How good is that? That lining's fitting beautifully. It's not saggy at all. We have our Welt pocket. We have our zipper pocket. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. I love it. Look, I am a huge fan of Shamballa, but this one is really exceptional. What a beautiful, beautiful design. And as usual, drafted to fit perfectly. It just works. Wow. Okay. All right. So now's the time we take this bag out for a spin. We show it off. We love it because it is such a great design. So thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I've had a heap of fun doing this one. It's been a bit different, a few different techniques, but it came together beautifully. So thank you for joining me. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. That way you get to know when my next tutorial is coming out. I'd love to see what you make with this. So get your fabric, get everything sorted, cut out your pattern, get sewing. All right. Until next time, everyone, happy sewing.